The more ruthlessly you edit your presentation material, the better your presentation will be. Well, hello, my name's Mark Buchanan and welcome to Presentation DNA. In this series, we're trying to unlock the genetic code of great presentation. We're not interested in rules because they don't work, but if you can find your own voice within the principles that we're sharing, that's going to maximize your impact as a presenter. And today we're looking at how to ruthlessly edit your material. And I do mean ruthlessly. It's the bit that I find the hardest about preparing a presentation because I've just got so much that I want to say, but I can't say it all. So before we go into how I actually edit, let's think about the mindset that we need to have in order to be able to edit effectively. Now, anybody who's a regular presenter who says that they don't enjoy it, at least at some level, is probably not being honest with themselves. I'll just be straight up and say I love being in front of a group of people, sharing ideas with them, challenging their own ideas, and hoping that we can come to some outcome that will get us a better life or a better business or more profit or happier customers or whatever the intention is. But the thing that I have to keep reminding myself of is that it's not my job to be the hero. Just because I'm on the stage with the computer and the microphone and the lectern, I'm not the hero in the story. And if I think that I am, that's going to make a bloated, waffly, unsuccessful presentation. People aren't there to hear how great I am. They're not really even there to hear all the things that I've done, although I have done a lot of interesting things. My job is to make them the hero. They've got to leave my presentation feeling more able to cope with their world, whether that's spiritually or emotionally or economically, in business, in the office, at home. They need to go out thinking, you know what, I can do this. And the question that they're basically asking themselves all the way through my presentation, whether I like it or not, is what's in it for me? That's pretty much the only question that our audiences are asking themselves. They may not say that out loud to us, but in the back of their head is, why am I here? What will this do for me? How am I going to be better at my job? Will this be worth the time away from my desk that I've had to give to sit through this presentation? They're all versions of what's in it for me. Or in other words, they're saying to themselves, what is the point of this presentation for me? Not the point for the presenter, but the point for me, the audience member. That's what they're asking themselves, and a good presenter will put all their energy into answering that question. We've got to have a point, and we've got to get there in such a way that people leave feeling uplifted, feeling enabled, feeling empowered, feeling reassured, feeling energized, feeling more confident. So basically, it's a trade. Every presentation is really a sales pitch, or every good presentation is really a sales pitch for something. And in that sales pitch, we're basically saying, if this, then that. It's a trade. We're saying, if this happens, then that will happen. If you do this, then you're going to get a good outcome. Or if you don't do this, then you're going to get a bad outcome. So all good presentations are basically a variant of one of those two statements. It's either do this and it will be great, or don't do this and it'll be bad. Or there's variants on those variants as well. So unless you do this, something bad might happen to your business. So if you do this, something bad won't happen. Or if you do this, something good will happen. So that's the argument that we've got to make. Now, we may make all kinds of other facts and diagrams and stories and jokes, but we must never lose sight of the core of the presentation we're making, which is we're telling them if, then. That's what makes a good presentation. And therefore, our editing is going to be premised on that. And we're back to what we talked about in the very first video, which is the single sentence summary. What is the outcome of this presentation? Where is this presentation going? Now, actually, if you want to click on the little card up on the top right-hand corner there, that will take you back to that first video. But that's how I arrive at my single sentence summary, is what is it that I'm offering my audience? That's the outcome. That's the call to action. That's the payoff of a good presentation. So, 3 sets of questions I ask myself. So by now I've got a huge mind map, or I've got piles of post-it notes, or I've got a notes app full of notes, or I've got sticky notes, or however I've assembled my material. I'm looking at a huge amount of material, and basically I've got to turn that into a lot less material so that my presentation is punchy and clear and focused. So the very first question I ask is, I pick up a post-it note or I look at an arm of my mind map and say, so what? So what? Yeah, it may be factually correct, but what difference does that make? What difference will that make to my audience, the fact that they now know about this thing? Or that I've proven this connection, or I've shown them this formula, or I've preached from that verse of the Bible, or I've explained to them this life lesson, or I've given them a hack or a tip. So what? And unless the answer to the so what question links directly into the point of my presentation, it's got to go. Because lots of things are interesting, but they're just not helpful. I love sharing what I've picked up elsewhere with my current audience, and it does make it interesting, but overall, things should only be in my presentation if they're driving towards that end conclusion. So I'm ruthless and very cynical, especially with myself, saying, but so what? Now, maybe I'm a bad audience member, but I spend a lot of my time sitting there, whether that's in church or in a business setting, saying, yeah, thank you, but so what? That isn't making any difference to my life. So why are you taking minutes of my life to share that with me? So you've got to get kind of ruthless on your own stuff. Now, it's easy to criticize other presenters, but it's really hard to criticize yourself. But that's what we've got to do, to say, unless this element can really prove that it absolutely has to be in there, out it goes. Now, that's going to be basically a yes-no question, isn't it? So if it's got a point, it stays in. If it hasn't got a point, it goes out. Something that I find personally happens to me a lot of the time is that I come up with a whole other thought or a whole other metaphor or a story or an activation or a keynote slide. But then when I look at it in the cold, hard light of day, I think, to be honest, I'm just saying something that I've already said, but in a slightly different way. So again, am I duplicating? If I am, it needs to go out. If it's not, and it's unique and original, it can stay. The other one that I struggle with a little bit is tangents, where it really is good stuff and it's not in the presentation anywhere else. It does matter. It can give you a benefit, but the point then is it really directly focusing on the outcome of this particular presentation or not? And some of my tangents and some of my duplicates are actually really good, but for a different presentation. So it's not wasted, and I'll keep those notes or I'll keep that bit of the mind map, because in some other presentation, that will be the core point. But if I'm going to be focused in my presentation, what I can't afford is to start drifting away from my main point. And in the next video, when we start talking about how to organize your material for maximum impact, that's going to become really important. So it can look for quite a while like I'm building and building and building, but sometimes it just turns out I am actually going slightly off course. So it's a tangent. It may not be a bad thing. It may well be useful, could even be life-changing, but it probably just needs to go in a different presentation. So I filter every element that I've assembled for my presentation, first by the so what test. Does it really matter? Does it mean anything? Does it make any difference? Then, is it a duplicate? Is it an unnecessary repetition of my core point? Have I already made that point better somewhere else in the presentation? And then finally, is it, yes, fantastic material. It is pretty close to where I'm trying to get to, but it's actually going to diverge off. It's going to become a tangent. It's going to become a distraction, in which case it's got to go. So it's the same process, whether you're mind mapping or you're taking notes or you're using index cards or you're writing an outline in Microsoft Word or you're on sticky notes. It's really getting into that mindset to say, I am the servant of my audience. It's my job to make sure that they leave the room feeling like the absolute hero, and whether they're impressed by me or they think I'm good or not is very much secondary to that. So put on the humility cloak and then get really ruthless, get the scissors or the razor blade out and hack everything that you possibly can. And if there's any doubt, if you're not quite sure, is it in or is it out, then it's out. You can always drag it back in later, but the more ruthless we are, the more we pare down our material, the more willing we are to sacrifice points or even slide designs that we put a lot of effort into, the more likely it is that we've come up with the absolute most compact, shortest, clearest, most impactful presentation that we can. And that's going to set us up for success when we do actually stand up on the stage and start to deliver. So, hope you've enjoyed that. Thanks for being with me on this. If I could just take 1 second to just invite you to go to buymeacoffee.com/Mark Buchanan. There you can support the channel, help me offset the cost and the time of making these videos. There's some membership levels there which will give you tutorials on how I've designed one of the slides from each of these videos, and on a gold membership you get all of that and you actually get the slide as well. So if you'd like to do that, go to buymeacoffee.com/Mark Buchanan. Thanks ever so much for being with me. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too, and I'll see you on the next one.